Number 5 Lissi Oland.
Wood she's tackled yet. She hopes to get several bowls out of this maple log, starting with a large salad bowl. The finished bowl will measure roughly 26 inches across.
This is the bottom of the bowl, and when I cut it straight down through here, this is going to be the top edge of the bowl.
But it's not until Lissi cuts into the log that the character of the wood is revealed.
That looks good. These rings.
Working the half of the log she likes best, Lissi roughs out the shape of the bowl with her chainsaw. She splits the log down the middle, as if it were a ripe watermelon.
Whoa! Yet you'd think after you made one bowl, you don't need to make another bowl, that they'll be all alike. But each piece is different. And it has to do with that specific piece of wood.
The roughed-out bowl weighs close to 300 pounds, but Lissi is determined to move it from her shop to her lathe by herself. To move the heavy wood, Lissi relies on her tractor and on an independent streak that compelled her to move from her native Denmark to the United States more than 30 years ago.
I worked in the bank in Denmark for 3 years and decided it was time for me to get out.
Lissi uses an engine hoist to move the wood from the tractor to the lathe. Once the bowl is securely fastened to the lathe, Lissi puts the huge chunk of wood in motion. Lissi uses special cutting tools she designed with her husband to flatten the bottom of the bowl. As Lissi works, she listens for the wood to tell her when it's level.
You see, right here, it's a smooth sound. As you come out here, I can tell, or hear, it's out around.
When the bottom is flat, Lissi uses her hoist to turn the wood around so she can work with the top of the bowl facing outward.
All I decide to do is to take away the excess and the bad spots, and then usually the shape comes out nice. So it's in a way, you know, you let nature decide on its own how it wants to look.
The work becomes more precise as Lissi cuts a groove around the edge of the bowl. The groove is Lissi's only guide as she hollows out the center of the bowl with her chainsaw.
And then you simply cut all the way around. And then I use a crowbar, like a little persuader, to get it out. And then you have a pretty nice piece, pretty nice chunk of wood for yet another bowl.
But to finish this bowl, Lissi must scrape the inside clean. It takes a full day to perfect the surfaces of the bowl.
Number 4 Blair Davis.
You slide it up in proximity to the piece, and then as the piece spins, you hold the tool, and as the piece comes around, it cuts off pieces of the wood. This is a very tricky stage because when this thing starts to spin, out here will just look kind of gray because there's not wood there all the time. You're just, the piece of wood will be there, and then you're just turning air until this gets all the way back around again, and you're turning it again. So you have to be very careful when you start that you bring your tool up very slowly, because you sometimes don't know there's wood there. If you just stick your tool in, it'll come around and bang. So it takes a little care. And you also, when you get ready, you always set your tool rest and hand turn the piece around, because sometimes you can set the tool rest right here where you think you're fine, and then the piece comes around and it'll hit the tool rest. So you always want to check and give yourself a little room. This will take a while, because you can see I'm right on the tool rest here, and when I get around here, there's nothing. So there's a lot of material that's going to have to go on this one. That's just the nature, the wonderful nature of wood. And the real fun part of this is just exploiting that, because each piece is totally unique. And that's, to me, this is the most fun part of the whole thing, is getting this thing to round, finding out what's in there. You never know. Sometimes things are in there that make it unusable. Sometimes things are in there that make it wonderful. So it's just, that's one of the things that really appeals to me about turning, is the fact that you're not dealing with the same material. It's not like clay, which is consistently clay, or even lumber, which is fairly consistent. This is just, you never know what's in it, so it's always kind of a fun little exploration. We're about ready to fire this up. I'm just making one final check here that we're clear of the tool rest, and I will start at the lowest possible speed just to sort of be sure everything's okay, and then gradually bring it up. It's always a trade-off. The faster you can spin it, the faster you can take the material off, but at the same time there's an element of danger and balance, so it's just sort of a tap dance to try to go between it. And if you are really perceptive, you will notice that this is turning the wrong direction. This lathe turns both ways, so you can turn it inboard and outboard, and also has this wonderful feature where you can actually stop it midstream and have it go the other way. So that appears to be running reasonably well. What I often do is just put my hand on the lathe and sort of feel it, and then I'll bring the speed up until I feel it kind of start to rock a little bit, and I know I'm starting to get some vibration. Then we'll just stop there. As you turn the piece, each piece that you take off, each chip that you take off, brings the piece more into balance. So as you turn, you're getting it more and more in balance, and at the same time then you can gradually bring the speed up. So we'll start, and this is the careful part, because you're turning mostly air. So you really have to, you can hear probably that it's only cutting every time it goes around. And eventually we'll get it where you can hear it hitting twice, because it'll start to hit the two corners. It's just kind of a time-consuming process. You just have to go at it. But this is sort of the zen time of turning. It's very mindless. There's nothing to be done except just take off the excess until you finally get it to round. See, this is the dangerous part. You can hear it coming around and hitting, and I can't see anything where I'm turning. I can only do it by feel. So you really have to go in very carefully when you've got a big chunk like this. If you're dealing with a fair amount of energy. I'll stop this so you can actually see what's... And you see that part has been turned. But obviously here nothing's happening. Here I'm turning again. Here nothing's happening. So you can see gradually this turned area will shrink down, and I'll be cutting the full circle. And at that point, then we can start talking about having it be a bowl. I didn't really talk much about tools. There's a wide variety of tools. Most of what I use are what are called deep fluted bowl gouges, this is a very large version. They come in all kinds of sizes, this being a smaller one. I would use this for detail work or finish cuts. This one I use mostly just for taking off large amounts of material. and these are designed for bowls. This deep flute allows you to have a long cutting edge and get down into the bowl easier than some of the other things for like spindle turning if you were making balusters or something like that. So I guess now you can also, as you turn, you can see where I've turned and I've gained some gap here, so I can bring the tool rest up a little closer. It's always advantageous to have the ratio. It's just a teeter-totter. This is the balance point, and it's got probably 3/4 of an inch there, and I've got 1.5 feet here. So when this thing pulls and catches, I've got plenty of leverage out here to control it. If I had the tool rest way back and I was trying to do this, when it caught, it would throw me. So you always try to keep the tool rest as close as you can. So it just gives you a little more safety. And once again, I always, just in case there was a little piece out there that was sticking out, I always check this to be sure that I'm clear of the tool rest before I fire it up. So we'll have it some more here. If you could hear that, but as you start to get closer to round, the sound that the lathe makes as it comes around, that sort of ripping sound of the cut gets longer as a percentage of the turn. Then you know you're getting a little further down and less choppy. One problem with this particular blank is that it's not dead green. I like to turn stuff when it's really freshly cut. This was cut almost a year ago and sat out covered in plastic, and then has been in a plastic bag, but it still has dried out some. So the ends that were exposed, like here and the other end, have dried out some and become a little harder, so it makes it a little more difficult. Makes it a little less messy. If you're going to be a turner, particularly a big turner of green wood, you pretty much have to like to be messy, because you end up covered in shavings, and when these things are truly freshly cut, as they spin, the water just comes flying out of them, and you really do take a bath. I don't know if you can see it, but the lights and this little plastic shield I have, just so it doesn't throw water all over the tools, it really is, you don't have to not mind being dirty, which is something I've always kind of enjoyed, so to me that's just part of the fun of it, but not for everyone. Okay, we'll get this thing we're a little more in balance now, so I think we can probably bring it up a little bit more. I'm only running this at about 250 RPM at this point, so it's still turning fairly slowly. Probably hear the difference in sound, how much longer there's more sound being made during the cut than there is during the gap between it, which means we're getting closer. But out here, it's still just cutting on the corners. Because I haven't really gotten all the way to the end yet. Walnut tastes terrible, by the way. Bouncing around too because I'm being very aggressive with these cuts, just because I'm just trying to get rid of material. If I really took my time and cut slow, I could have it go nice and gently. Still going in and out tells me that I'm still not round. An old lathe technique also is you can just lay the tool on top of your piece, and if you hear it bouncing, then you know you're not round. So I don't think we're round anywhere yet, totally round. Getting close. Still hard out there on the edge. Once I turn the first half an inch or so away from that dried area, it should get softer. Usually it's just a surface phenomenon. But we're actually in round a couple of spots here. But there's still a lot of bark left, so I think I'm going to start working on the bottom of this now and try to take some of that off. Sometimes bark can be left on a bowl in certain applications. I can show you some things later. There's a way to turn these where you actually turn the bowl. When you first start, if you put the faceplate on this side as opposed to the other side, then you end up with a bowl with the natural bark edge around it, which I do sometimes. And sometimes if there's an interesting little bark inclusion, I'll even leave it in the bowl. But not too often, because bark is generally difficult. It tends to have a higher shrinkage rate than the other surrounding wood, and a lot of times it'll let go and be a problem. So probably see now that I'm starting to get down through the bark. And the interesting thing about walnut is that people mostly think of walnut as being a very dark wood, which most of the applications you see it is. But actually the dark walnut that you see is only the wood that's in the center of the tree, the heartwood. The wood that's around the perimeter is still quite light. So I really like that. So when I turn the pieces, I try to include oftentimes the light and the dark, because I really like the contrast in the wood. But you start to see it come through here. There's the bark, and then there's this sort of spongy layer here, and then you kind of get into the heartwood. This is kind of an unusual piece. This is one of the great things. This is a good example. These little areas here, there was obviously a branch that came through here because you can see the knot, but there's some heartwood and some dark color that's gotten into this, and light and dark, and these looks like little pieces of bark that were included for some reason. The tree wrapped around on itself. So things like that are just the great little finds that sometimes can be exploited, sometimes not. I mean, these will probably be gone before we get rid of the bark, but you never know what's in there, so we'll keep turning. change tool rests at this point, because this straight one works fine for getting started, but there's actually a special tool rest called bowl turning rest. Which are curved, which makes much more sense because the bowls are curved, so it allows you to sort of follow the contours of the bowl and get and keep your tool in closer for a larger part of your cut. The tool rest is usually set such that the cutting tool itself is at about the center, where the so it would be something about like that, and it varies depending upon the diameter of the tool, and it's kind of a feel thing. Once again, we check for clearance. Even though it's more or less round, the difference in weight between bark areas and wood still gives it a fairly significant out of balance. As you can see here, I'm taking a fairly aggressive cut. I'm cutting probably half an inch of material off at a time, which you can do in green wood, but you would not be able to do if the wood was dry.
Number 3 Aaron Hammer. Number 2 Stuart Mortimer.
What? You don't both of it? They're alone here. No. I will get them or I'll buy them. I will get some manufacturers, some of them, to give them to me.
Number 1 Peter Andres and Werner Rumplmayr. The largest turned wooden bowl measured 13.15 feet in diameter and 3.37 feet from base to rim. The bowl was made by Peter Andres and Werner Rumplmayr in Gurdes, Austria on September 4, 2005. The enormous cost of a giant lathe brought the idea to use a tractor as wood-turning lathe. For the segmented bowl, total of 450 hours of work had to be invested. 486 segments were glued with a 55 kilograms special glue. Bowl was made from 9 cubic meters spruce wood. (1,700 kilograms) bowl was placed on a 136 HP tractor and it was spinning at 60 RPM. They only used gouges and held it with hands. After all process, they made about 300 kilograms of chips. Wasted wood or piece of art.